Nice to be here, and we're going to give you some quilt fun today. How about that? My husband Steve is here. He's a retired pharmacist, so if you have a drug interaction or question, you can talk with him about it. For those of you that don't know me, I live close to Fort Worth, Texas, in Weatherford in Parker County. We lived in Keller, which is North Fort Worth, for 20 years, and before that, we lived in Southwest Kansas, just straight up over the Panhandle. So, a prairie girl to start out with, and went back to my native Texas roots, and I'm very happy to say I got here as quick as I could. And we have a lot of Louisiana family members too that you're going to hear about a little bit on in the lecture. But I grew up in a family where a sewing machine lived on the dining room table at my mother's house and on my grandmother's house. I just thought that's where they were supposed to be because someone was always sewing. I had a lot of sisters. My mother had a lot of sisters. My grandmother was just a natural. There wasn't anything that she couldn't make or produce. I can't believe the things that she made for us when we were little girls growing up. And some of my greatest memories was actually it was on an Easter, and my mother and grandmother were working together, and there was a snip, snip, snip of the scissors, and then the hum of the sewing machine all night long. And the next morning, my sisters and I, 4 of us, all woke up to new little Easter dresses on the end of our bed. So that was kind of the family that I grew up in, lots of 4-H sewing, and even when I was being the third of the 4 sisters, of course 4-H was a big part of our life, and I didn't realize that I wasn't a 4-H member when I was 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. And when I got to be 8, all my sisters were like, "Oh, you get to actually be a member now." And I was like, "Well, what have I been? I thought I have been a member." But anyway, I got to do all of the 4-H stuff and was in the style review and all that, and actually won grand champion at the style review and then also at the fair that year with some of my sewing. So I guess I've been a sewing entrepreneur for a long, long time. Now, when my husband and I got married, he was in pharmacy school, and towards the end of that, close to graduation, we had friends graduating. A few friends were having some babies, and I thought, well, I've got scraps and I'm going to make some quilts. Now, grew up with quilting. Quilting was always a part of our family, but I had always been garment. I had not really done the quilting process. So a couple of phone calls to my grandmother. I got some of those baby quilts made, and this was way back in the mid-70s, and I got hooked. I got the quilt pox before I even knew that there was such a thing. And then as we graduated and we started having our children, of course I was still sewing. I had boys, so not as much sewing as you would for a little girl, so I jumped over and started doing a lot of quilting. I wanted some quilts for myself, for my home, for some friends, and I jumped in and started doing them. And I found out they're not very easy. I could buy some fabric and whip up some clothes and wear them to school the next day, but I was not having that same luck with my quilting. I thought, okay, what is happening here? I can do tailoring, I can do bound buttonholes, I can put in a zipper in 10 minutes. You know, why am I having so much trouble putting all of these little squares and triangle units together and making all of them have nice sharp points and smooth flat work? I was really struggling, and I realized that it was the triangle unit that was giving me the biggest hassle. So I started thinking about what is actually happening when you're putting a quilt together. So you have a human doing the work of the cutting, the sewing, and the pressing. And you're working with fabric that is a cotton woven fabric. It's going to shift. It's going to change when you press, when you add heat or steam. All of that fiber is going to move around. So we're working with something that has movement to it, and then we're working with a human that isn't perfect. So I thought, okay, how can I make a quilt and remove the human element? The human not having to worry about the cutting, sewing, pressing. How's that going to work? So I thought, okay, if I can sew a bunch of stuff together and then cut it, then I can make it perfect or close to perfect. It's like I've hopped over or improved on that human element of the cutting, sewing, and pressing. So I thought, well, what's the easiest thing to do? Well, that's squares and strips. So I came up with what I call the basic square. And the basic square is a square in the middle, strips on the side. You can use scraps, you can use, cut off your yard goods, whatever. And the strips just have to cover that square, because you're going to do the square and a square system. You have the square and a square tool, and the way you lay it on here and trim it up, you're going to get triangle units. So every time you have a strip on there, it's going to turn into a triangle unit. So I started playing around with this, and I started working with making more triangle units, different triangle units. So I started numbering them and called them options, because from the basic square you have the choice or the option to trim it into any triangle unit that you're looking for. So the first one, option 1, square and a square. Option 2 is when you sew strips around it again and get bigger triangle units. Option 3 is going to be flying geese. Option 4, half square triangles, and so on. And I'm now, after 30 years, up to option 40, brand new option, option 40. So, and it's the same tool, the same ruler, the same concept. So once you understand the basics of the basic square and how to use the ruler, everything now is just, you know, you just keep moving along with what you're doing. So your tool, so this is what we call the original ruler. It's the one I've had for 30 years. And you have a 90-degree angle over on the right side, and you have 60s and 120s on the other. And those make skinny triangle units, and we'll look at those in a little while. But let's concentrate on the 90, the normal square, because that's in our brain more. Those images are already in our head. So we're going to put the tip of that 90 right into the tip or the corner of that square that was in the middle. And the lines are going to go right over the seam. You have 1/4 of an inch from the 90 tip to the edge of the ruler, and that's your seam allowance. So even if the square wasn't cut perfect or sewn perfect, or it moved a little bit in the pressing of it, you're still going to get that perfect 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And as you trim each corner and rotate around, you keep the unit square, even if your sewing is off. Get it on here a little bit for you. Okay, so the 90 is right in the tip of that corner square. The lines from the 90 go right over the seam. You're going to cut right across that side, getting that perfect 1/4 of an inch. And then after you make your first cut, you turn it and you go to the next cut, and you use the lines that are horizontal and vertical to keep the outside square. So even if the human element in here, your 4 cuttings, your 4 sewings, you press twice, so you have 10 human elements. If you start looking at quilts and looking at the seam and realizing each seam is 3 human elements. So what we try to do in the approach of how we make our units and design the quilts and put them together is to remove as many of those human elements as we can. And we'll talk about that as we go in on some of the quilts. So you keep the outside square even if your inside where your human is off a little bit. And you always have that 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So when you sew this to your next piece, you already have that good point. Usually you're trying to, I don't know if you've thought about it, but to make just a plain square and a square, if you're in the traditional part of the world, you cut a square and cut 4 triangle units. Then you try to find the perfect middle of that perfect triangle to match up to the perfect middle of your perfect square, and then you try to sew a perfect seam. And if all of that happens on all 4 of those, then you get that nice 1/4 of an inch seam allowance in that point. So that's a lot of perfects that's not in a perfect sewing world, you know. So when you sew it all up and do all of the human here and then trim it up with the ruler, then I always say you're stacking the deck. You're setting yourself up for success. So let's look at some quilts that use option 1. So when you purchase the ruler, there's a book in there called Quick and Easy, and there's some easy patterns in there to get you started and going. And then towards the back of the book, there's some harder stuff. I always like to put some harder stuff in the back of the book because I want you to know there's more coming. There's more that you can do. Not just a square and a square. Oh, you know, we'll be at Houston or somewhere and someone come by, you know, do you know the square and a square? Oh, I've made a square and a square quilt. No, it's a whole system for making every quilt. So this one is, I think it's called Pumpkin Patch, and it's just all option 1s. So you see the black center with the orange triangles, all option 1s, separated with some sashing. Do you know that I think you have 5 in a row. I think you have 35 option basic squares in here that you're going to trim into option 1s. You can make those in an afternoon. and be ready to sew those together. When I am really humming along and getting along with my machine, who said they weren't getting along with their machine? Yeah. If I'm humming along and my machine and I are gelling together good, I can do 75 to 100 of these basic squares in an hour. And however long it takes you to sew them, it takes you about that long to trim them up. So let's say you can get 35 of these in 2 hours. That's stopping to grab an M&M every once in a while, you know. And I know you've got them in a little bowl by your machine. And so if it takes you about 2 hours to sew them up, it's going to take you about 2 hours to trim them up, and then you're ready to start putting your quilt together. So the square and a square system is going to offer you speed, and it's going to offer you accuracy. And those are usually two things that don't walk hand in hand together. If you want to maybe move those down a little bit, I'm going to put these quilts over here. Now this one is in the reference book. It's the volume 1. It's the main book that we talk about. And this one is, you're going to look at it as, gosh, I just forgot the name of it. We're going to look at the quilt and then maybe the name will come. It's called In the Garden with Tumbling Blocks. That's just what it is, tumbling blocks. So it's In the Garden with Tumbling Blocks. And these are all option 1s. So it's all option 1s put in rows, and when you put the rows together, you alternate them. So let's look at them where you can see them a little bit more. So here are the option 1s all put in rows, and when you put the row below it, see how the center of the option 1 matches up to the seam in the next row. So you've taken a difficult quilt and turned it into an easy quilt. So all option 1s sewn in rows, and even the color, the way that you do the colors of the strips so that you can get the different colors connecting, there's only 3 different combos of colors that you're going to sew on your basic square. 3 different combos, I think, of the squares, combos. So you're already getting excited and seeing possibilities, aren't you? Normally to do a quilt like this, you're going to have to cut diamonds. You're going to have to do set-in seams. It's one that I always say you make, and then it goes in a box under your bed, waiting for your estate sale. Now this one is another option 1s, all sewn together, and it's our little Christmas tree. And this one is a pattern on our website. So you can go to our website, squareandasquare.com, and you can, it's a free one on there, I think. Just download the free pattern. Now all of these are option 1s, and it just so happens there's 25. So you can use it as an advent calendar. You can get like the little Christmas ornaments or charms, put it on a ribbon, tack the ribbon in the center of your option 1, and each day add another one, and then you'll have your tree decorated in the 25 days of Christmas. So I want you to look at the color combos, because remember, you can put any color on here to build it so that when you put it together, you have your design. So this one up here at the top, this is an option 1. You have the little beige square in the middle with 2 beige strips on it and 2 red strips. And then all of these outside ones are like that, whether they're the red or I don't think there's any green. And then notice on this one how we have red on 2 sides, green on the other 2 sides. Okay? So it's the way that you put the colors together. And of course, you can make any size you want with that one tool. You don't have to buy another ruler to make another triangle unit or to make another size. And that was in the beginning when I was designing this, I was like, if I can't get this ruler, and that's one reason why so many options came with it, triangle units, was because I was like, if I can't get this ruler to do everything but load the dishwasher and put supper on the table, then I don't want to do it. I want one ruler to do everything. It really frustrates me when I see other ruler companies making you have multiple rulers for different sizes and different shapes. So that's one thing that I love. Now, for option 2, what you're going to do is you're going to take your option 1 and you're going to sew around it again. And of course, the strips have to get wider and longer because instead of this size of square, now you have this size of square. Get it? So your strips get wider and longer, and you're going to sew around it just like you did here. So you sew around it again the second time, come in and trim it up in the new corner of your new square, and look how you get bigger, larger triangle units. And you can just keep expanding, expanding, expanding. And all of these little corners you trim off, if you've been watching any of our webinars that we've done the last year and a half with the pandemic, we have talked a lot about going back in and using up these little scraps. In fact, the last one that we did in May, we're making little stars that's going to go inside the Star Jingle quilt. Go back and sign up for our webinars and watch that. We've gone back in and used up all of our scraps. So let's look at a couple of quilts that use option 2. Now this is definitely made with little scrap trim offs, and I think this is also a pattern on the website too, and it's called Basket Collector. So as long as your scrap that you take off is large enough to fit on the side of the square, then you can sew it on there. So this one I've had probably 30 years. This little quilt has been, I think, to every event that I've been to. And in the beginning at Houston, one of the first or second years I showed it, somebody were like, do you have kits for that? Do you have kits for that? I had a lot of questions. Do you have kits for that? And I'm like, honey, it's just on the floor around your trash can. Just pick it up. Just pick it up. You've got it. You've got your kit. Just pick it up. Okay. Now I've been working just on my little stack here, and I forgot about my big stack. So this one is also this one's called Disappearing Star, and it's in the reference book. And I want you to think about how many times you have a piece of fabric that you don't want to cut up. You want to see it in a large piece. And this one's called Disappearing Star, and it's great. You can see the big green squares. I think they're about 9 or 10 inches. So this is a great design for, you know, you have a little dinosaur print, you want to make a quick quilt for a little kid, or, you know, a big cabbage rose floral, you just hate to chop up that beautiful print. This is a great one for that. And this one's called Disappearing Star. Now I'm not sure in this color combo, if you look at the green with the little star print on it, those are the points of the star. Do you see a green star point star? You kind of blink and it goes away, and then you focus again. So it's Disappearing Star. And part of this green, and this green print is part of our Transcontinental Railroad collection. You're going to see quite a few quilts made from this collection, and you can see all of that fabric on our website. For those of you that have followed me and know about me, you know I love history and that I design my own fabric, and I usually take a part of history and design fabric around it. So about 11 years ago, I did the Pony Express fabric for the 150-year celebration. I did when I did the Abe Lincoln line when Abe Lincoln was 200 years old for his birthday. We had a celebrating Abe line. And the Transcontinental Railroad is now 150 years old, and so we have it. And you'll see a couple of quilts with it. And then my new fabric I'm working on actually is a red, white, and blue line. We actually started with it probably last summer sometime, and we started out with our basics, our solids, which are called tattered and torns, and then we did our everyday check, and then we did our floral, and then behind you on the back table is the eagle vine with the eagle, and we're working on the 250 years of America, of celebrating America. In 2026, we will be 250 years old. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and stay on our knees, and maybe we'll make it. So I'm going to back up a little bit to some simple quilts I forgot to show you. This one is called Soldier's Comfort, and here you can see the blue floral that goes along with our American collection. And just a really simple quilt, but there's a story that goes with Soldier's Comfort. So during the Civil War in the South, the soldiers, of course, went and joined up very, very quickly, scared the North because You know, the Confederacy was just formed and they already had a military, and the North thought, okay, they're serious about this. So of course there was no military issued items, no sleeping bags, no uniforms, none of that. There was not even a manufacturing place in the South to make uniforms until about a year later, when the South started making their own uniforms. So whatever the young soldiers had to take with them was all that they had. So the families got together quickly and made a soldier comfort quilt for their men that were going away. A quilt that was put together very easily and very quickly. And it was about this size. It was not very big, and the soldier would take it and roll up in it like a cocoon, and that was his sleeping bag. And there are many places I've seen, heard stories and seen in museums, and you'll see pictures with this quilt kind of over their shoulder, rolled up tight. And you'll see it go across here and over the back, and then they have their canteen over it. And many of those quilts they have found with bullet holes in them. And of course, so many soldiers, North and South, died that sometimes this was their funeral cloth. This was all they had to bury them in. So the soldier comfort quilt. So many of them, that was the last thing their family saw. They would roll up their quilt like this and put it over their shoulder and tie it over here and marched away. And the story goes that they called them soldier comfort because they wanted them, when they rolled up at night in the quilt, to think about the people back home that were missing them, loving them, praying for them, and hoping that they were safe. So it was to comfort him physically and mentally. This one is called Country Barn. And starting with the green disappearing star, all of these are ones that we have fabric and kits for. So this one is Country Barn, just a really simple one to do. Just a real simple one. Yeah, just strips. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can start with any size you wanted, really. The center one is just a little bit larger than the strips that go around it. And of course, these checks were what they called everyday checks during the 1800s. And all of these colors are the deep, rich vegetable dyes that were used during that time period. This one is called Road to Nowhere, and you're going to hear about our family. And there's a girl in the family that is Emma, and Emma is kind of a lost soul in the novels, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them. And the names of her quilts usually have it's Road to Nowhere. You know, that's where she thinks she's going, that she's on a road to nowhere. And so this one's just simple 4 patches. We use the 4-patch ruler for, and then a split rail, and then just a solid square. So once again, you can see how that solid square, you can use that for a piece of fabric that you want to be a little bit larger. Simple quilt. Most all of her quilts that she made in her life were simple quilts, because she didn't have the confidence that she needed. Now, in the 4th novel that I'm working on, you see her gaining her confidence so much that she becomes a Confederate spy. This one is called Village Square, so I'm backing back up now to get in line with our triangle units, our options. This is really a cool quilt because it's so easy and it's so fast. It's called Village Square. And you can see the option ones up in the corner of the block, and then just 2 rectangles. So here you see the option ones, 2 rectangles. Option ones again, plain square, and then the bottom row repeats the top. So it's like a 9-patch, but just very, very simple. And then look how the sashing is really wide. That is actually a very southern thing. In the South, when piecing started, when the railroad came, when women could travel a little bit more and they weren't just at home all the time, that was when pieced blocks started. When women started traveling, because usually quilts were big quilts and more whole quilts that were put together with chintz, and even cutting out chintz and putting it together with applique. So pieced blocks with what we look as a traditional block now didn't start till women started to travel with railroads and stagecoaches started, because they wanted some handwork to do. They would have their stuff in a little drawstring bag, and it would go around their waist, and anytime they were setting traveling or in a stagecoach, they could stitch. Now in the novel, you're going to see two of the girls in a stagecoach, and one of them is trying to stitch, and she's bleeding all over her stuff because the railroad's bumpy. I mean, the stagecoach is bumpy. And so she finally puts up her quilt. And her sister, Abby, is the prim and proper school teacher that wears 9 petticoats, you know, because that's what the school rule was. The teacher had to wear 9 petticoats because heaven forbid you see through her dress. And she was trying to get her sister to sit properly in the stagecoach after like 3 days of riding, and she's like, I am not going to sit up straight in this stagecoach. So look carefully at the color combo on this one. I'm going to show you another one in red, and all we did was just switch up some colors a little bit. So I'm actually going to leave it here for a minute so that you can look back on it. So all we did was switch up some colors. So look at those options in that option 1 in the corner. Switched some lights and darks and made one corner red. And these are called Village Square. And notice how the big wide sashing in here is the background color when that one is the blue. Now, the big wide sashing started in the South when the women started traveling and making the piece blocks, and it also, they did it wide. Their sashings were not skinny sashings, they were very wide like this. And a lot of times color. They were the color of the day. Okay, so now we're going to make flying geese. Option 3. So option 3, we're going to take our basic square. Everything starts out just like this. You've learned to trim leaving the 1/4 of an inch. So we're going to do that on 2 sides. But on the other 2 sides, look how we go right up to the tip. It's a sharp. It looks like you've cut that 1/4 of an inch off, and actually you have. But that's because you're going to cut through here and get 2 perfect flying geese. So when you look at the ruler, you're going to put the 90 in there, and we call it the 2-step because when you trim up sharp, you're going to step over 2 lines off of that 90, and where the line hangs off the edge of the ruler, you're going to put that line in there, and it's going to make it that nice sharp cut that you need here so that you can cut it in half. So if you think about it, when you come back and sew a 1/4 of an inch here and a 1/4 of an inch here, your point will be right there, exactly where you need it to be. This is the way your flying geese should look no matter how you make them. That point needs to come down nice and sharp in that corner. And of course, your traditional flying geese, your points for a star, flying geese are in just about everything that you make. This one uses some of the railroad fabric. It's called Double Star. There's kits and patterns back there for it. And I want you to look at the star where we've used the flying geese, the black points. And then look at the option 1. See, that little option 1 knows how to do a lot of stuff in a quilt. It can play any role it wants. Here, you see the option 1 as a setting square, and then you see the flying geese for the star. And when you put the rows together, you see the big red star pop out because those option 1s were placed in there alternating. And this one's called Double Star. You see it all, or do I need to point something out for you?
Where's the red star?
Okay, look at this as your star in the middle, and look at those red points. You see those red points? So it's called Double Star. Double Star. So you can see some of this Transcontinental Railroad fabric. You can see the tracks in the border for the fabric, and then here you can see what it looks like on the back. Now, Abe Lincoln was the one that actually pushed the government and the people to do the railroad. And he's the one that signed some of the papers to get everything going. But they knew that the railroad was too big of a deal for the government to do, or just one person. So they actually put it out there for different groups to come together and to work and to do certain sections and have it all come together. He said that we need that hardy pioneer spirit, which I know all of you have, and to get this railroad put together. And unfortunately, he didn't get to see all of it come to be. This one is called Americana. We've used that same star with our flying geese, and we have used the train fabric. And I always have a quilt made out of the new fabric, and I can't tell you how many of these Americana quilts have been made for the different veteran programs that are out there. And it really comforts me to know how many soldiers have been given this quilt from this pattern. And I think it's lots of times it's hard to find fabric or a pattern that is a great one for a guy. And this is a great pattern and great fabric. And it's one that I don't think any lady would be iffy about putting on the back of her couch. I think she'd be happy to have that and not worried about it messing up her decor.
Jodi,
Yeah.
are you designing fabric?
Yes, these are all of my own fabric designs. Mm-hmm. And it's just my own business, my own company. It's not like I work with, any big fabric company out there. And you can follow us with Facebook, or you can get on our email list, or there's lots of different ways that you can follow us. Yes, ma'am.
Will you be at the Houston Quilt?
Yes, I've already sent my money in. Told them where I want my booth. So we're going to have a grand celebration at Houston. So we're trying to get a lecture together on a Thursday or Friday night in one of the big ballrooms. We're working on that to have a big party. We need to celebrate, we just really need to celebrate. And so we're going to try to have a big lecture room that night and have a big party on a Thursday or Friday night of festival. And then we're going to have 4 booths all in a row. And then across we're going to have 2 double booths. And we're going to have all of our quilts that we make in our premium club. And I've got some of them here I'm going to show you. And then we also do a thing called Quilt Club Week. Anybody do Quilt Club Week with us last year? When all the shows started being canceled and like Paducah Spring was moved to like September, we got word, or October, whenever we got word, and we were doing webinars just every day. When the pandemic started, I was like, I have to do something to help. And so we were going on every day doing live webinars and lifting people's spirits, helping them know what day of the week it was. I mean, it was helping us and it was helping them, and we just jumped right in with both feet. And then they didn't. You guys didn't want us to stop, so we kept going all year, and now even around into this year. And our Premium Club live webinars we did on Monday all year this year, and then our free to the public ones we've done on Wednesdays. And all you have to do is go to our website and sign up, and then you'll get email notification every time we have one. But I don't know why I got started on that. What was the question? I don't know either. The Houston show, yeah. So across is going to be, Quilt Club Week, that's what it was. So when Paducah said they were closed and Houston was closed, I'm like, I'm having a quilt show week online. What do people want to do when they go to a quilt show? Well, they want to hang out with a friend. We can't do that, but we can make a special Facebook page where you can hang out with a friend, and when you watched a certain lecture we had during Quilt Club Week, then you could talk to somebody else that watched that lecture and have a good time with that. So those are your square friends is what we call them. Hang out with your square friends. So it was like when people go to a quilt show, they want to see different stuff. They just want to, sample this, and this. They want to go to this booth and see what this person shows, and this booth, they want to sit down for a lecture. They want to take a little mini demonstration. So that's what we did. We had 3 days of it. People were like, they sent their husbands on a hunting trip so they could do it. They were cooking food so they wouldn't have to cook during Quilt Club week. And it was a grand celebration time. We started on a Wednesday night. It was all online. And we went Wednesday afternoon and night, all day Thursday, all day Friday, till Saturday afternoon. And then we had a bonus class on Sunday because they were so sad they didn't want it to be over. So we did a bonus live on Sunday. So we're going to do Quilt Club week again this year. We're thinking it's going to be the first week of December. We've got teachers lined up. It's going to, we just, you know, once you do it, you can just grow off of what you've learned and done. And so we're planning a Quilt Club Week 2021. So we're going to be there in the Houston booth talking about Quilt Club Week and advertising it, and our Premium Club. Our Premium Club is a paid subscription, and you get to do stuff all year long. And this is kind of like a celebration for our Premium Club members, but of course we invite other people to come in and join too. So this one is uses some of that Transcontinental Railroad fabric. It actually has a panel with it, and you'll see the panel all in one big piece in a quilt here in a little bit. But this one, we cut the panel up, and then we've used some of the other railroad fabrics, and this one is called East Meets West, because that's what happened. They started east, building the railroad, and went to Promontory, Utah, and then they started in Sacramento, California, and headed out the other direction for them to meet up. East meets west. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's a nice, really nice little quilt. And this one's called Union Square. It uses flying geese and half square triangles and an option 1, and it uses some of our railroad fabric again. So the big option 1 in the middle, and then the points going around, we used flying geese and option 3 and option 4 half square triangles, and then just set it on point. Who would have thought that train fabric would turn out so elegant looking? Yeah. It's those deep, rich colors of the 1800s. Now this next one is called Grizzly Mountain, and it's a cross between a bear paw and a delectable mountain. Now you'll hear some more about the women as we go along, but my great-great-grandmother, Elizabeth, lived in LeCount, Louisiana. She went there from Mississippi when she was a little girl, and then they took 8 wagon loads full of women west right before the Civil War and went to Parker County, which is the county I live in, which is south and west of Fort Worth. And this is one of her designs. I have the original quilt that she made, and if you go over to the pattern and flip it over to the back, you can see the original quilt. And then this is one that I made out of some of my Civil War fabrics, and it's called Grizzly Mountain. And I have just a few kits left out of this fabric, like four or so kits left out of this fabric. And then some of my new fabric, my new America 2026 Celebrate America fabric. You can see on the back table there's some eagle fabric, and we're going to use some of that eagle fabric and remake this one. This one is really big and heavy.
What colors did your great-great-grandmother use?
She used kind of a solid turkey red, and you know, they didn't have black. They couldn't make black dye, but they could make the indigo dye. I don't think they could do black till about 1890, but they could get a really, really dark navy that looked almost black. So I call it black. We actually call it Kettle Black in our fabrics that we use, and we use it as a black. Some people look at it and say it's a dark navy, and really in the 1800 history for the Civil War time, it was that Kettle Black, kind of an antique black that was more of an indigo. So she had the turkey red, the Kettle Black, and then she had a whitish beige color in it. And I'm thinking that the majority of it was solids. I don't know. I think one of them had a little print in it, but majority of it was solid. Okay, here is another one using flying geese. So people are like, well, what size can you make? Well, any size you want. You can go as little or as big. And so see those little star points? You know, you can use some pretty small scraps that you trim off. You know, these would be giant for what you needed here. So you want to pass it around? Can you catch?
So the size.
Yeah, so just use those scraps on here, and the square is small. And so,
Size of the
yeah, so your strip or your scrap has to be the proper proportion for the size of your square in the middle. Yeah. Okay. So here's your half square triangles. We've looked at a lot of quilts with half square triangles. So remember on the Flying Geese, we did the two-step on two sides because we cut that way. So now you have to do the two-step on all four because you're cutting through all four corners. So you have to move those points and create a seam allowance in there where you didn't have them. And then of course you get your half square triangles, your pinwheels, and then, you know, if you've been quilting longer than 15 minutes, you know Flying Geese and half square triangles are in everything. So. Okay, so what if we did, instead of having a plain square in the middle, what if we put something else in the middle? 4 patch, 9 patch, maybe another little pieced block like a star. Put something else that's square in the middle. So that's option 5, change the middle. So we put 3 strips together, cut that up into a square. That became the square in the middle. It kind of looks like a rectangle, but that's the illusion that you get. Put your strips on the side, trim it up, just like in option 1. So put anything in the middle. So on this one, what if you put a 9 patch? What if you put a 9 patch in the middle? This one's called Crazy 9 Patch. So here's your 9 patch. Put blue on 2 sides and your background on 2 sides. Here's your 9 patch, did green on all 4. Now it's on point, but when you turn it, do you see how it's just a big 9 patch? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. See it? So see how we just look at quilts differently? We look at them with square eyes. And we put them together so that they're achievable and you get them done. You know, think about why you don't finish a quilt. Either number 1, it doesn't look the way you want it to. Number 2, it's, you know, you're going to have to figure out something's going to have to come apart, put back together. Or it may be looking nice, but it's taking so long to get it done to make it look nice. You're like, I really want to play with that fabric over there. And so you kind of, you know, step it aside. I call, you know, we call them UFOs, unfinished, you know, quilts. Well, I call them pigs, projects in grocery sacks. So you get this new little project, this new little animal, this new little pig, and you play with him for a while. And then pretty soon another new little pig comes along. And so you think, oh, I don't want him to feel bad, so I'll buy this cute little pig pen, a cute little box, and I'll put that little pig in that new little box, and he'll be happy because I bought him a new corral, a new pig pen. Well, pretty soon you've now got a feedlot going on, you know, because and what happens is they start stinking, they start causing trouble, and you don't even want to go in the sewing room anymore because you got too much stress from all that quilt guilt going on. So one lady told me after a lecture, she said, I solved that problem. She said, I just shut the door on that bedroom and moved my sewing room over to the other. So here's a tiny crazy. So it's the same as the blue one, just small. Crazy 9 patch. Now this one, we did a 9 patch in the middle. So it's all sewn. We have a 9 patch in the middle. We surrounded it with our strips. And we trimmed it, leaving the 1/4 of an inch. But instead of using the 90 on the ruler, we used the 60. So instead of giving you this true looking triangle here, it's going to give you like a ramp triangle. And we put those all together in rows. And this is called Jingle Jangle. It's our newest one. We did a webinar on it in May and taught you how to do it. And then the second one we did, instead of a 9 patch in the middle, we put a star in the middle. And that's the current one that we're working on. No star in this one. The one that we're working on that we did in our most current one. Instead of a 9 patch, we'll have a star. But do you see how they make a circle? You see the circle? And the way you do your colors, what if you did a blue background with your 9 patch being light? You know, you're going to get a total different look. Yeah. This is called Jingle Jangle. How many of you guys do Pinterest? Okay, if you go on Pinterest and look at Jack's chain, you will see a million different color combos. Jack's chain. Look on Pinterest, you'll see a lot of different, in fact, I saw a Jack chain on the scrap, there's a Facebook page about scrap quilts, I can't remember. Scrap enthusiast or something like that. I saw Jack's chain on it just the other day. So here's our 9 patch with the strips on the side. We use the 60 and you get this angle like a ramp. Put those on rows and you're going to have some go to the left and some go to the right. You can see how they dance both directions. The next row is just a plain 9 patch with a big rectangle. And then these rows are the same. The Jingle Jangle rows are all the same. So once you get the hang of what you're doing, it's pretty mindless. Yes, and you see that circle. So the way that you do your colors, this is a real faint kind of shabby chic color combo, but here you see the floral circle in this row, and then in the row down there you see the little red check circle. Yep. Mm-hmm. And see, this row has the floral 9 patch, and this row has the red check 9 patch. Those are the only rows that change, but these rows with all the dancing are the same rows. Yeah, this one's a big quilt. Big queen quilt. I did that during the Texas ice storm. Not too much. Not too much. Okay. So this one is option 11. So you already know to trim leaving a 4th, do a 2-step, sew around it multiple times, chop it up. So that's all we're doing. So this was our square in the middle. We trimmed leaving the 4th, just like the option 1, on all 4 corners. We sew around it again. We go right up to the tip on all 4 corners, and we cut through those sharp corners, and we get the option 11. So if you put an option 11 in each corner, put an option 1 in between, sew it together like a 9 patch. Look at that, beautiful, with no work. You see it? You see the option 11s? Option 11's in the corner. Option 1's, option 11. No sashing, just put another block right next to it, block to block. And there you go. Okay, on this one, we're going to take the option 11 and we're going to put flying geese on 2 sides. We're going to put them on this square side. So we're going to put a flying goose there and there on all 4 of them. And then we're going to put those together for the block. So here's the option 11 right here. See that red? That was your square in the middle. And then we put a flying goose on each side. And then that was considered, that's your star flower point for class on Saturday. This is actually a star flower block, and we just put all 4 together, did a sashing. There you go. And this one is that same little star flower, but instead of putting the blocks, all 4 of them back together, we did a little separation, a little sashing in between. So for star flower, we're just going to push those out a little bit more. And this is actually the star flower. And this is the class on Saturday at the shop we're doing. So we've used the option 11 in that star flower shape in the corner, and then did some flying geese and a plain square in the middle, and that was your block, and then just skinny sashing and a cornerstone. And I love how those 4 come together and make a secondary design. So you can bring those little star flowers together and make something, or separate them out. So once you start looking at quilts, I mean, there's very few of them that are not just right there at your fingertips ready to make. Okay, so I'm going to show you these 2. These were projects that we did in our Premium Club. And so in the Premium Club, twice a year we do a big project, and then the other times of the year we do smaller projects, which would be like taking 1 block and using it for a quilt, what I call 1-block quilts, or technique where you learn how to start reading the charts in the book and changing sizes and making your own designs. Some of the students that are in there are like, I never dreamed that I could just sit down and figure out what I wanted to make, you know, and have those charts in the book and the square eyes to start seeing all of it. Now this one was called Miss Perfect Patchwork in the Mystery of the Fiber Forest. And so this lasted, it's like a Nancy Drew. Think about Nancy Drew. It was Nancy Drew and the Hidden Staircase. Well, this was Miss Perfect Patchwork. And so the option that we make is option 17, which is 3 triangles and a square. And then there was a story. It was a mystery quilt, so they didn't know what they were doing till each time the class came online. And with each one, there was a mystery. I mean, there was a story. I told a story that went with each block. So it starts out with the border. You make the border first. So they didn't know what they were doing. And in the story, in the mystery of the fiber forest, the border was winged creatures. And she had to get through the winged creatures to get into the forest. And she knew there had to be a great treasure inside because it was guarded by the winged creatures. So your border is the big winged creatures, and that's option 15. So it's like a big flying goose with a little flying goose inside of it. Those are the winged creatures, and that's option 15. And then each block had a story to go with it. And when she got through that block to the end of it, then she learned either courage or confidence or endurance. And when she got to the end of the fiber forest, got through it and had every block made, she realized that believing in herself was what she learned as she went through the mystery of the fiber forest. Now we do have some kits on this left. I don't have any with me, but we do have a few kits. And any of these that you purchase, this one and the next one that are part of the program, there's video teaching that goes along with it. So you get that also. These,
You have the kits, but do you have the pattern?
this one has the kit and the pattern, and the pattern comes with the video teaching. So you don't just pick up a pattern, you get the video teaching and the pattern. Because I don't want to leave you stranded or lost. I don't want you lost in the forest.
In the forest.
I don't want you lost in the forest. So this is another one that we did in Premium Club, and this was when the Transcontinental Railroad fabric came out. And of course it has the story to go with it. The book of history is back there. The pattern comes with the video teaching. And there's probably about 5 kits for this one left. But it goes through and it tells the whole history of the Transcontinental Railroad. And each block represents a certain aspect of it. The different players, you know, from the Civil War soldiers to the slaves to the Native Americans to the Mr. Durant, the bad guy that ran the train on that went from east to west, to the Sacramento, the big 5. It does have a direction on it. So each part of the quilt, it's a big quilt, teaches the history and the story. So you can see the artwork in the middle that we made, and so down the middle is some of the telegraph and the little bit of the history that was sent back and forth during the railroad. And then on one side of the east, it shows the Civil War soldiers. Union and South had to learn to work together. And all of Mr. Durant's dirty dealings that happened on that side, the pop-up towns along the railroad. And then over on your left side is the big 4, the Buffalo, the big bridges that had to be made. When the railroad was on the east side traveling west, they measured their progress in miles each day. But if you were on the Sacramento side moving the railroad towards the east, they measured their progress in inches each day. Yeah. And then of course our flying geese up here are our railroad tracks, and then each block, one talks about the history of the soldiers, another one talks about the history of Mr. Durant, another one the Oak brothers, and the Ames. Their last name was Ames, and they were in government and helped with the government side of it, but they also had a tool company, and they said that every one of their tools has been a part of building all of those man-made natural wonders of the world, that their tools are the tools that people use to build those things. So I had one lady in the club that made 2 of these. Yeah, she had 2 sons. She had 2 sons, and she's like, I gotta do them. Now this one here on the table is the pineapple quilt, and it's option 12. And this quilt I had back in 19, I think. I think it was the most popular one at Houston that year. And we ran out of kits, and I always hold fabric back in case people need a little bit more of this or that. And after about 2 years, then I released the little nest egg of fabric I had. So we have just a few kits of this one if you're interested in those fabric combos. Now I'm going to jump over real quick and tell you about some diamonds, the options that work with the diamonds. And instead of a square in the middle, you're going to start out with a diamond shape in the middle, and you're going to surround it with your strips just like we did with our squares. And you're going to use the 60 and the 120 on the ruler to do your trimming up, and you get all of these long, thin triangle shapes here. So the first one I'm going to show you is the very first one, where it's just like the option 1. You leave the 1/4 of an inch on all 4 corners, and this is the shape. So get that shape in your head. Oops. It's not going to stay. We'll see if it stays. Okay, so that's the option 7 here, just like the option 1, but you've got those long, thin triangles. So in this one, you see it there laying down with a little square, and sew it in a row. And then here you see it standing up with a bigger square. So you're not making little tiny stars, you're sewing rows together. Wow. Set yourself up for success so that it's easier to do. So if we take that same shape, option 7, And we do an option 1, which is a square and a square. And we do an option 2, which means you sew around it again. You remember option 2? What do you get? Storm at sea. So here you see the option 2, where you have your square, sew around it 1 time, 2 times, and then the vertical, option 7. And those repeat. Then you have it laying down horizontal and an option 1. Catch. Yes?
Do you have that done in a bigger quilt that you can show us? Or?
I didn't bring the big one with me. Yeah, I actually made it in blue and had it at Houston in 19 out of some batiks. And that was a king size one that I made, and it actually went to my son in Costa Rica when we went. So I don't have that one, but we have a bigger version of it, and we actually have those batik fabrics. We're remaking those, and we'll have those at Houston this year in that. Okay. Now remember when you cut the square option in half, you trim the corners different, cut it in half to get flying geese? Well, you can cut this together, cut this apart, and get what we call Canadian geese with those long thin points. That's option 18. And that's what we did here in this one. This one's called Postage Stamp Star. So here you can see it, the option 18 here for the star points. And then in the sashing, we've used the same one, but we switched the colors up so that it makes a 4-pointed star. Do you see the gold 4-pointed star in the sashing? And that's Postage Stamp Star. Now this one, we're going to that little star flower corner that we did. Option 11 with the flying geese, the little star flower corner. We're going to use those in the corner. We're going to use these like this to make a star. So we're going to have that star flower in the corner, these here, and then in the middle we're going to do option 4 half square triangles and do a pinwheel. So do you see the star flower in the corner? So option 11 and option 3. Option 4 pinwheel in the very middle, and then that option 18 star points. So this is your option 11 with the flying geese for that star flower corner. Here's your diamond cut in half for your points, and here's your half square triangles to make a pinwheel. So we don't try to make this all one shape. That's another one waiting for your estate sale in a box if you try to do it like that. So use the options, get nice clean units and great points, and set yourself up for success. Now this one was quilted on a home machine. I have a friend named Kathy Corella in Tennessee, and she has done a lot of machine quilting for me, and she is teaching some classes in the Premium Club. And so for this month of June, all of our classes in the Premium Club are on how to use your home machine, not a big long arm, and quilt beautiful things on your quilt. Now I also want you to notice this one, it really stands out, but this is like a flange that's right there with your binding. And our shortcut binding tool back there does the binding and the flange at the same time. And there's videos on that you can get on it, and so you can get this beautiful flange and the binding put on your quilt all at the same time.
Jodi, do you do any of your own quilting?
I haven't for a while. I used to, but I just have too much going on, and so that's something that I can have some talented people do for me. I do like to, and one of these days, if I ever slow down, I'll do more of it. See, this is a gold flange here on it. Now these next 3 quilts are quilts that are, I'm going to say replicas of quilts that were in our family. So I have all sisters, my mother has all sisters, her mother has all sisters, her mother has all sisters, her mother has all sisters. So no boys were born in our family until my sisters and I. I have 2 boys. My other sisters have sons and daughters. All of the women were widowed young, between the ages of 18 and 32, never remarried. All lived to be old, between 82 and 103. So not very many men in our family. In fact, when my second sister got married, my oldest sister got married. She was the second sister to get married. She brings her husband to the very first Thanksgiving before they get married. And no, it was after, because they got married in September. Anyway, brings him to the first Thanksgiving, and he kind of looks around.
Where's all the guys?
Yeah. Where's the family room and the football game and the guys, And my aunt is stirring something on the stove, and he says, where are all the guys? Kind of looking around the corner, is there a family room built onto the back or whatever, My aunt's stirring at the stove, Thanksgiving something, and she goes, oh, you're our new fresh meat, honey. You're our new fresh meat. So my sisters and I have not been widowed young, and we have sons, so we have broke one of the chains in the family, curse, whatever you want to call it. But I will tell you that my oldest sister married a guy who his dad died when he was 8. My second sister married a guy who his dad died when he was 8. The very first date Steve and I had, his dad was taken to the hospital with a heart attack. And my oldest son married a girl who her dad died when she was 8 years old. So hopefully it's pushing on out, going farther away. Okay, so my great-great-grandmother that lived here in Louisiana, that came here as a little girl from Mississippi, she came here because her parents were killed in a fire, and she rode a stagecoach with her sister here. And hopefully they would be able to find her grandfather when she got to LeCount and Louisiana, and he just happened to be in town that day when the stagecoach arrived. The little girls got off. They had a note pinned on their green dress with little red flowers that said, we are the granddaughters of Lucas Maley, and will you please help us find him? So the youngest one was about 3 or 4, Megan, and then Elizabeth was probably about 6 or 7 years old. So put on a stagecoach, traveled from Mississippi to Louisiana, hoping that the grandfather was still even alive and there, and that they would find him. So when the house burned, the dad got the little girls out, went back in to get his wife who was pregnant, and they both died in the fire. He had wrapped the little girls up in a quilt. So that quilt we call the burn quilt, the fire quilt, or the cursed quilt. So the very first fire it was in was when the house burnt down with Elizabeth's family. It was in a house when my mother was a little girl that was hit by lightning, and the house burned. And they have a picture, this is about 1900, have a picture of the little house with the side of it all black from the lightning hitting it, and you can look through that window and see the bed on the other side with the quilt on it. It was in the house when my mother was a little girl. She kicked a gas lamp. She was taking a nap. It fell over on the bed. It started to burn. You can still see the patch on the quilt about this big where it started to burn. I had it in a quilt shop I owned in the late 80s, hit by lightning. The quilt shop started to burn. The quilt was in it. So my mother had it for many, many years, and because she had a fire with it when she was a little girl, the story goes, she would not have another fire with it. So when my mother passed away a few years ago, all of my sisters kind of backed away from it and said, yeah, Jodi, I think you get this one, because they said it makes sense. They said you've already had a fire with it at your quilt shop, so you're the one that gets this one. So I was telling that story. My mother passed away in 16, and I was telling that in one of my lectures, and I said, I have the quilt. And Steve kind of perks up in the back like, we have the quilt. And he was like, I better check my fire insurance. But Granny, who came, the little girl that came there when she was a little girl, she was a prolific quilter. She loved gardening. In the wintertime, she was doing applique quilts. Most of the time, she did applique quilts. And then in the summer, she was working in her garden. So they always said that she brought her garden indoor during the winter. She did she did the Grizzly Mountain, but there were 2 quilts that she did over and over again that she made for a lot of people. One was when you got married. It was called Liz's Gift. We call it Liz's Gift in the story, but she called it Bridal Veil Wreath. So we use the flying geese here and that diamond cut in half for option 18, and just make those little corners and then put them together. So when you put them, and then when you put the blocks together, you get the circle. Do you see the circle? Which is kind of like a bridal veil wreath. And I've made this quilt 4 or 5 times. I've done them with scraps, I've done them in 2 colors, and they're just really pretty no matter what. Now this was another one that she made over and over again, and it's called Homestead Stars. So when you got your first home or your first land, you were homesteading, then she made this quilt and gave it to you. And I've made this one probably 5 or 6 times. It's a pretty one, and really it's easy to do. It's a fun one to teach. So we always make, when we get new fabric, we always make up new fabric. He's pretty good in the kitchen, let me tell you. Okay. Yeah. Okay, now these next ones are when you take your block and you're going to cut them like this. You're going to take this and cut it like an X. And you get this shape, 2 of those, and 2 of these. Okay? So we're going to take these long ones and sew them together to make one called Hurricane. Sorry. So we're going to use this one for Hurricane, and we're also going to use it for Buzzsaw. And then we're going to take this one right here, I'll show you it first, and we're going to do Hexie Stars. So what we did, let me see if I have a chart. I don't have a Hexie chart. But what we do is you take 3 of those. So see, one goes down with the point down, and one goes up on the other side. And so it makes it kind of like a half moon or a half circle. You put 3 together. Then you just sew those rows together. And then when you put row after row together, you get your Hexie Star. So no diamonds, no Y seams, no set end points. Let me turn it like this. Maybe you can see it better. Because these are the rows right here. Okay, so see how you have, 3 together. All the noses come together. I told you wrong. All the noses come together and you put 3 together. Then this one, see how the star goes up, and then the next one, see how the star goes down. And then when you put the row below it on, then they match up. And then this here to finish the row out, these right here, these are you already made those. They're right there. And so this is Hexie Star. So no more doing English paper piecing and it taking forever to get it done. Okay. So this one, we just use these, and you take another, it comes out like this, and you get a square. And this is Buzzsaw. So you see how this is one here and this is one, and so you start down here sewing that together, and you'll have all these little fishtails on them, like so you just sew them together like that. And you have these little fishtails on them, and you make 4 of these, and then you put them together and square it up. Just trim off those tails. For your buzzsaw. Yeah, option 25. And then we've used we have a big setting cornerstone of the buzzsaw in this next one. And then we've done this, but before we put these together, we put another strip on the end, so it extends those out so that you have, so here you can see that shape right here with what we call extender on it. And so this is one piece, and then you start here and sew it together, and then trim off so that you have the square. Put 2 together, 2 together. And here's your hurricane. Y'all know what a hurricane looks like. But they turn counterclockwise, right? and this one turns counterclockwise. This one's machine quilted on just a regular domestic machine, not a big long arm. It's really heavy. It's really heavy. And then this one is called Abby's Wedding Quilt. And Abby's Wedding Quilt will be, this quilt will be on the cover of the new novel, Novel 4. And we've done some of this crazy stuff here. And then in the sashing, we did that option 18. And this is called Abby's Wedding Quilt. And when we get it quilted, it'll be on the cover of the new novel. So when you look here, this is the block. But when the blocks come together, you get that beautiful interaction, which actually your eye kind of goes to first, thinking that it's the block. So, quickly, this is the main reference book of Square and a Square. So if you don't have that book, you're just getting one, that's the one I recommend. Then the diamond one is all this crazy stuff that I've shown here at the end. And then there is the 3 novels, and I'm working on the 4th one. And this will be the cover quilt for the new one. And this is all based off of our family history. It starts with my great-great-grandmother that came here as a little girl that I've talked about, that made the 200 quilts, and how they grow up here in Louisiana. And then right before the Civil War, they head to Dallas-Fort Worth area, go to Parker County, which is just one county over from Fort Worth. And there'll be about 10 books in the series covering all of the generations of the women up to my sisters and myself. And there was a story I was telling some of the ladies back there. I said, remind me to tell the story. What was it?
About the turning over of the...
In the Sabine River.
Yes.
Okay. So when they were coming and they were crossing the Sabine River, it was at a high flood time. We all know what that's like, don't we? So the wagons are pulling through, and she had picked either the wrong spot to cross over, or because of the flooding, it was higher than what she normally had. So here are the 8 wagon loads full of women coming from the timber mill where the grandfather had, heading to Fort Worth. They'd had a bad storm and a tornado, and then she got lost. She'd hired a Texas scout he got them lost, and now he's gone. They don't know what happened to him. Anyway, they're pulling the wagons across the Sabine River, and as long as the horses and the wheels are touching the bottom, then you can just keep going right across. Well, it started getting deeper and deeper, and pretty soon the wheels were not touching and the hoofs of the horses were not touching, and the wagon started to float. Well, when a wagon starts to float and you're going across the river and not with it, then the wagon starts turning sideways and starts tipping over, and the horses know they can't control what's going on behind them, and now they're swimming and they're starting to twist and pull. It was a very bad, dangerous, scary time. So Elizabeth, the grandmother, had her little 3 or 4 year old daughter little 3-year-old sitting on the bench next to her as they were going across. Was the wagon started to tip, the little girl's toy, the little rag doll she had in her hand, fell over into the water, and as she reached to try to catch it, and the wagon all bumpy and everything, she fell out on this side, and the water's going like this, and the wagon's turning, and the horses are screaming and everything. Well, she went in, and they thought she was going to get caught up in the horses and the wagon and everything, but the current took her and kind of swept her around the horses and back around on the other side. And the mother, of course, in long dress, jumps into the water, and just as she's got her hand in the wheel and the spokes, her arm to hang on, and she's reaching out to grab that little baby girl, and grabs her by the tail of her dress and pulls her in and pushes her back up on the wagon seat, just as the horses start to hit some river bottom, and the wheels kind of catch, and there's a rock sticking up, and the wheel just kind of thuds over the rock, catching her leg under the water in between the rock and the wagon wheel, and it breaks her leg. And so they camp on the other side of the river for a little while for her to get literally back on her feet a little bit. We don't know exactly how long they camped on the side there, but we have her her diary of her writing in there. So in the novels, I think you'll really enjoy them. I've taken the true stories of the family, blended it in with their quilting, with more true history of the day, and then of course my imagination to blend the stories together in there. And I think you guys will really enjoy them. And then the quilts that are in those novels are in this one here called the Melee Women. So that's the end of our lecture, the end of our quilts. Do we have any questions from anybody? And anybody that's interested, I got stuff back there on the back table, and the new Eagle fabric is back there too. Yes, ma'am?
There are some spots left in the class on Saturday. If anyone is interested, you can let me know.
And it's a star flower.
What time does the class start?
What time does it?
9.
Starts at 9 o'clock. And we're working on 2 blocks, so the cutting of it is not too much. It's not a big, I don't know, how much is the class?
55.
$55 for the class. Okay? All right. Anything else? Well, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope I've given you an exciting morning this morning, and that your creative juices are just flowing, and that we're going to have a blackout because everybody's sewing machines are going to be running when you get home. Yes. 12. Option 12.
Okay, so I bought the first book with the ruler. So are all options in that book?
No, because that's the quick and easy book. So it's got just a sampling of some quilts in there and a sampling of the options. So the reference book, these are the reference books that are your main books. So this one is the one that covers the square. It's volume 1. So you've got options 1 through 17. You have all the charts so that you know what sizes you need if you're doing your own thing, or if you've taken somebody else's pattern and you're adapting it over. And then it has over 30 quilt patterns and over 50 blocks in it. And this is your main book. And then this is volume 2, your diamond book. So it goes from option 18 to option 39, which are all of your diamond shapes for several of these quilts you've seen here at the end. So it's got the options, it has the charts for the sizing, it's got over 200 blocks, and then it's got, I don't know how many quilts, but quilts in the back, patterns in the back. And then the brand new option, option 40, is like an individual pattern back there. So if you had the original ruler and these 2 books in option 40, you have the meat of the system, the main part. But I highly recommend the reference book if you don't have it, okay? All right, and we also have the 4-patch and 9-patch ruler, the grande tool, and then the shortcut binding. And of course, there's just not time to do all that. We would need to brought our lunch to do it.
Now, the grande tool, I had the square and the square.
Original.
Not the mini, the regular.
Original.
But the grande includes
The grande is, it'll cut any of the square options, so that's 1 through 17. It'll cut your squares and your strips, and it has a special line on it so that these diamonds that you're cutting in the middle, it seemed like that was the hardest thing for people to do, is cut those diamonds. So we added a line on the grande ruler so that you can cut your diamonds more easily.
Okay, so that was like an upgraded ruler. You can do everything with this other one, but you have an upgrade.
Right, your original you can cut your diamonds with, but some people really struggled with cutting their diamonds with it. So I was like, okay, I always think if I'm gonna make another tool to help somebody, I gotta add more stuff to it because I don't want it just to do one thing. So we made the grande to cut the diamonds. It'll also cut the square options, and it'll cut all your squares and strips. Right, thank you. Thank you, thank you.